Hey, welcome back to Two Stupid Guys Trade Stocks. I'm Dylan.
And I'm Vinny, and I have a wild story for you today. All right. It's just absolute nuts. And it's something I think needs more attention. So I kind of want to tell you the story. It's something financial related, and it's something that I think everyone should be aware of, and not enough people are. And Dylan's kind of new to this whole thing.
Yeah, I have no idea what's happening. If you like this kind of entertaining stock market content where it's two stupid guys trying to figure everything out, give us a like and subscribe. We'll get started. Two Stupid Guys Trade Stocks.
All right. So this is kind of the basis here. It's very funny to me. When I first heard this news story, this is what the sort of image got conjured up in my head. You know, Robs is a relative term. Some people seizes might be maybe the correct legal term at this particular point in time this occurred, but effectively same thing. Someone that owns something was deprived of what they owned by a government official.
By a police officer.
A police officer, yeah, exactly. A sheriff.
That's fantastic.
You imagine this would have been happening out in 1860, but no, this was in 2021, and then it happened again a couple weeks later.
Okay. All right. Yeah, so I don't know what's happening, so this is kind of interesting. I don't know where we're going with this, but if this is a story of how cops messed up, great.
Yeah. This isn't designed to be a cop bashing thing, but it's something that people need to pay attention to. So this gentleman right here is actually the sheriff of San Bernardino County. It's his county, and it is under his guidance that this thing occurs. Basically, the news story here we're going to get to deals with this company called Imperial Logistics. All right, Imperial Logistics is a armored car transportation company, and they had a couple of run-ins in the state of California and San Bernardino County in particular, where they had traffic stops, and that resulted in the seizure between the two of them of over $1.1 million in cash. Right?
So to be clear, they just stopped them and then they just took the cash?
Effectively,
Why did
it's
they
kind of
stop
crazy
them?
to think. Would this happen to Lomas Fargus? I don't know. What happens? If any other kind of armored car company out there gets just pulled over, do they just take the money? Is that how this works?
Yeah, why were they doing anything shady, or did they think that they were had heroin in the back or something?
Yeah, exactly. So Imperial Logistics is not a big name as far as armored car transportation company go, but they do have a business that works in 28 states, I think, in total. So they work in a fair chunk of the United States. They do a lot of cash transportation with marijuana retailers. All right. That's what it really comes down to here. They also do cash transportation for other businesses, restaurants and small businesses, that sort of stuff as well. But that's what they're tied to these marijuana retailers is the reason why they get involved in this whole thing. The initial reason given for the first traffic stop is that they thought that they were following too closely. It's a pretty subjective thing, isn't it?
It's absolutely subjective. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
People follow too closely all the time.
So they followed too closely, and after discussions with the driver, they were suspicious that there might be some criminal activity afoot. So they obtained a search warrant for the armored car and all the compartments thereof, and seized a total of $700,000 in this initial traffic stop. Yeah, all right.
So they just took $700K from the armored truck.
Yeah, exactly. And this marijuana is legal for both recreational and medicinal purposes in the state of California. So what California law could they have been violating? Question. Right?
Yeah, no, I got nothing. There's that stupid law where if you're within the lanes, but you're driving slightly wildly, but within the lanes, that is a traffic violation. I don't remember what it's called, but it makes it so you can essentially pull over anyone at any time.
Yeah, sounds like a reasonable thing to do. But since they haven't violated any state laws, the sheriff's department turned over this 1.1 million, because there's a second traffic stop, to the federal government. All right. The second traffic stop, they obtained another $400,000 basically. All right.
Okay.
Taking the total between these two to 1.1 million. There's a couple of weeks in between. The second traffic stop was another, subjective thing: speed greater than reasonable, and failure to properly signal lane change. All right.
Okay.
In this case, they brought out a narcotics canine and he indicated upon the driver's door. Apparently, they didn't find any narcotics in the vehicle, but they did seize another few $100,000 in cash.
All right.
Yeah, and
Great.
during that time period, on the microphone, one of the officers was saying, "Oh, there's so much less than there was before." I actually put the exact quote towards the end of the story here a little bit.
Wait, are you serious?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah.
that's
Uh,
condemning.
so what does this all come down to, right? This is something called civil asset forfeiture, is where the state brings a civil action against property it believes to be the proceeds of or intended for use in a crime. All right.
Okay.
They do not have to bring criminal charges. In fact, around 80% of these, by one study, do not result in convictions for anyone involved in the seizure. And I think it was like 46 or 52%, somewhere in the mid that around 50% range, do not even receive criminal charges of any nature whatsoever. Around half. There's
Okay.
no one charged in this incident at all.
That's
Not even
awful.
so much as
Got it.
a citation, like a ticket was issued to the driver. Nothing.
So you're saying 80% of the time when police officers or some entity pulls over, I don't know, John Doe and takes whatever, 80% of the time there is no criminal charge in any way whatsoever.
No, there's no conviction in 80% of the time. There's no
Okay,
criminal
got it.
charge in around 50%, I want to say.
That's
So
still
30% of the time
too
they're
high.
acquitted. Yeah. So what all this comes down to is this program called equitable sharing. Like how we were talked about how the fact that they didn't violate a California law, and the sheriff turned this $1.1 million over to the federal government. The federal government, through this Equitable Sharing Act, will give up to 80% of the money back to the department that seized it as a thank you. But it's like almost like a bounty. You know.
Except the bounty was this guy that was following too closely.
Yeah, nothing like incentivizing government authorities to effectively pirate from their people within their constituency. It's brilliant. It's good business.
How is this
Yeah.
not on the front page of every news story for the last month?
Because people just don't know and don't care. That's what it comes down to. And the other thing that so this one gets headlines because it's 1.1 million. This is the thing to keep in mind right here is the median seizure is only $1,300.
A lawyer would
Right?
cost like $8,000. So at that point, you just lose
Yeah.
$1,300.
Yeah, you're just completely out of luck. At there, there's not a legal recourse that makes sense financially. You walk into an office to file a lawsuit like this, it's going to be a $5,000 retainer, probably minimum.
Yeah.
There are kind of these private nonprofit entities like Institute for Justice that will take up these cases, but as you can imagine, something like this is going to have their resources seriously stretched because there's so many people out there seeking assistance that they can only do so much.
Right. Oh my
In
gosh.
this particular case, actually, Institute of Justice, in addition to a private attorney, represented the Imperial Logistics Company.
Right. Well, it made sense for them because it was 1.1 million. So you like to spend 40 grand on a lawyer to get your 1.1 million.
Yeah, exactly. When it's 1.1 million, it makes sense. The reason why I decided to talk about this today is that we actually had a positive outcome here. So they filed a lawsuit to seek and return the property, and the federal government, in order to be kind of left out of the lawsuit, basically agreed to give back the 1.1 million as long as the case was dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can't refile it. But they got their money back as of this week.
Okay.
So that's nice.
All right. Well, that's
But
good. Yeah.
yeah, I mean that it's a rare win in these sort of things. Like I said, because the number here was so large that it made sense to really go after it. This is that quote that I wanted to point out here about the deputy. This is more small. I'm not sure if he was
Right.
talking about the calf seizure or some other thing, part of someone's anatomy. I don't really know.
Emotional damage.
But yeah, I mean that hurt in a couple ways. Not only was it really not terrific English, but it was also kind of highlights the fact that they're really out there basically looking for the cash. Like this was just like they were out there to seize this and get as much money as they could. So this is kind of a funny one. This is older. This is like 7 years old. So this has been going on for a long time. But like I said, it doesn't get enough attention. This is talking about how the article where they were talking about the cops in Texas seizing millions of dollars by policing for profit. And some of the stories out there are pretty wild. I encourage you to kind of Google this and read some of the stories about the Marine that had his entire life savings seized by I think it was Nevada was where that occurred. Or there was a fundraiser at a museum where the museum did not obtain a liquor license, and the police showed up and seized like 40 cars from the parking lot of this. And they all had to pay money to get their cars back from seizure. They were trying to like keep their cars because like this museum didn't pay for a liquor license.
How is this
Piracy.
not everywhere?
Yeah, there are some states now that have started to introduce legislation to make this more difficult. But it's amazing to me that how like underappreciated this is. This story back here talked about how the departments in Texas were basically treating this money that they received back from federal government as like a fund that they could do with what they please. It wasn't like it didn't come from a governmental source, as in like it didn't come from taxpayers' taxes. So they were able to do a little bit more liberal things with it, which included things like all the way up to buying the most inflammatory one was a margarita machine.
Well, that just makes good sense.
I mean,
disagree with you there.
margaritas are delicious. I prefer them, on rocks rather than frozen. But
me too.
I guess to each their own.
So they just to recreate the situation. I'm driving down the road. I'm following too closely. I have $500 in the back seat, and they're like, "Do you have drugs?" I'm like, "No." It's like, seemed like I want to say yes. So now they have plausible, whatever. So they take the $500. I'm like, man, I gotta hire a lawyer. That's way more than $500. I'm just gonna take the hit, even though I really need that $500 to give to a children's hospital.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then they bought a margarita machine, a really good one, for $500.
Yep, totally legit. That would be legal in the United States of America in 2022. As long as they can say they
I'm
suspected
honestly
you
at a
of
loss
crime.
for words.
Yeah. There are some police departments. This article in Texas talked about it. Like I said, it's a few years old, but some of the departments were getting more than 10% of their operating budget from seizing money and assets and selling them at auction.
This video will get 400 views, and everyone should know about it.
Yeah, I completely agree. Steve Lato is a great YouTube channel, talks a lot about civil asset forfeiture. The folks from the Institute for Justice have kind of resources on the website you can look at, tell you some different stories. That Marine story is an interesting one. They got a lot of publicity. I guess traveling across the country with his life savings that was seized. I forget exactly how much money it was, but some pretty crazy ones out there for sure. It's worth Googling and spending a little bit of time learning about it. And remember, if you get pulled over and they ask if you have any cash in the car, it's best to keep your mouth shut at that point. I'm not a lawyer though, but
yeah, that's probably true. And we are not picking sides on cops. We're just it's just a story. Just know your rights is what we're saying.
Exactly.
All right.
Catch you in the next one.
Thanks, guys.